You can still get trauma bonded to someone you have never physically met. You can still be betrayed, lied to, invalidated, gaslighted, manipulated, dominated, isolated by, even if you've never met someone. Today's question is it possible to have a successful long-distance relationship with a narcissist? Before I even get to that question, you should start answering it in the comments, because it'll be real interesting to hear what you have to say. Before I get to answering that question, just a reminder, healing programs coming up. Hit that link in the video notes, and please hit the notifications so you can get told every day when we have a new video coming out. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe, because then you can learn the answer to these wonderful questions like, is it possible to have a successful long-distance relationship with a narcissist? Keep commenting, folks. Let's see what you have to say. And also in the comments, have any of you had a long-distance relationship with a narcissist? So let's go to the question. Can you have a successful long-distance relationship with a narcissist? I'm going, probably not. Certainly not a healthy one. In a world of being able to video chat, text, email, long-distance relationships have a different viability than perhaps they did even a couple of decades ago. But most people will tell you that a long-distance relationship isn't easy, technology or no technology. The lack of touch, intimacy, routine, sharing day-to-day experiences, just being there. Not having those things takes a toll on most people. Now again, I'd love to know how many of you are or have been in a long-distance relationship with a narcissist. Drop a note in the comments just so we can see, and let us know how that worked out for you if you feel comfortable. But the fact is, when it comes to relationships, we meet who we meet. Sometimes you might meet someone when you're traveling, or someone who may be visiting your city for a little while, or somebody who moves off to school or gets transferred for work, and then voila, even if you didn't intend it, you find yourself in a long-distance relationship. It could be military, it could be any number of reasons. I don't think long-distance relationships are impossible. I think they require people who are independent, self-sufficient, people who are able to self-regulate and self-soothe, who are communicative, and long-distance relationships may not work as well when there are practical factors like raising children or other caregiving. I understand that. But they're not impossible. Ultimately, long-distance relationships do not flourish if either party in the relationship is insecure. You have to be comfortable with you and your partner and the situation and have trust. Lots and lots of trust. And since narcissistic relationships are all about insecurity and mistrust and suspiciousness and blame and projection, I think you're beginning to see why it's very unlikely why long-distance relationships with a narcissist would not work. Now, with a narcissistic person, it is probably impossible to have a long-distance relationship in any kind of healthy way. Above all else, narcissistic people are insecure and need admiration and validation. So if you are not there with them in person, they really are not getting that, right? Narcissistic relationships, even if you are in person, let alone long distance, are also plagued by trust issues, concerns with infidelity, the narcissistic person potentially needing to get validation from people who may be geographically closer or who they find on social media. Because projection is such a common defense in narcissism, the narcissist may often start accusing you of their shady behavior, which feels confusing and gaslighty. In addition, narcissistic people are often delusionally jealous, which can also make a long-distance relationship almost impossible. You will be accused of cheating, betrayal, inappropriate friendships, and you're not doing those things. Your social media will be stalked. Hell, even your devices may be monitored through malware or hacked passwords. It can get very controlling, and the amount of contact a narcissistic partner may ask you to engage in via video chatting, texting, DMing may potentially be very impractical and disruptive. But if you push back and say that you can't keep talking on video because you have to work or just do the stuff of life, You may get attacked and suspected for being shady, and time zone differences don't help. You saying that maybe you're sleeping at a logical bedtime for your time zone may be interpreted that you're doing something wrong, when in fact it's just bedtime. Now, it's interesting. Narcissistic relationships, especially in the love bombing phase, can often seem like that they have some long distance potential. The love bombing and the excitement of a long distance relationship in the early months can often play well with a narcissist initially. Lots of travel, showing up as a surprise, meeting on trips in other places, liaisons in hotels, phone sex. It's all very exciting. But at some point, the narcissistic person's attentional needs and validation needs and insecurity will become an issue, and you will find yourself either feeling as though your trust is being betrayed, or they will harangue you because they believe you're cheating. And a common gambit in long-distance narcissistic relationships, because they're so untrusting, is that they'll call you at bedtime by video so they can see that you are alone. And they'll do a lot of saying, you need to call me by whatever, video, FaceTime, whatever, instead, so I can see where you are. So again, that kind of stuff is common. Now, I have consulted on many cases of narcissistic abuse within the confines of a long-distance relationship. The non-narcissistic person would be doing everything in their power to either reassure the narcissist or appease the narcissist. And many people have said it was probably more exhausting and time-consuming to be in a long-distance relationship with a narcissistic person than being in the same city as them. For people who are being cheated on by the narcissist in a long-distance relationship, many of them blamed themselves for not being closer or being more available and believed that if they lived in the same city, that perhaps the narcissistic person would not cheat. No. The long distance just gives the narcissistic person more freedom and a better justification when they're caught, but cheater's going to cheat. The abandonment and attachment issues we observe in narcissism also doom the likelihood of success of a long-distance relationship. Now, there's a concept called rapprochement. It's something I've talked about on this channel before, but it's this thing called rapprochement. We observe it in relationships. I'm going to give you a very simplified version of this, but this concept basically talks about how people behave at the time of reunion, when they see someone again that they love. Now, healthy people with secure attachments at this rapprochement, at this reunion, are happy and they reconnect and they check in and they go from there. For people with anxious attachments, this time of reunion, this rapprochement, is very messy. There can be anger at the time of reunion, dysregulated emotion, just looking for a fight. Rapprochement crises in narcissistic relationships happen not just at the time of reunion, but also happen at the time of separation. And we tend to see abandonment anger in the day leading up to a departure. In most long-distance narcissistic relationships, there will be fights on the way home from the airport and on the way back to the airport. The attachment and abandonment issues take a difficult situation, a narcissistic long-distance relationship, and pretty much make it untenable. The heightened insecurity that a long-distance relationship with a narcissistic person can bring up does not bring out the best in either of you. You find that you are never present because you are either being bothered by the narcissistic person who keeps blowing up your phone because they don't trust you, or you may find yourself chronically wondering what they're doing, what they're up to, and why these long periods of silence. Now, this video is based on kind of a silly question, right? This idea of, does a long-distance relationship with a narcissist work? Because really the punchline to this is that no relationship with a narcissist works. Long-distance relationships raise a whole litany of other issues because of the distance and the disconnection, but ultimately, the core insecurity that plagues narcissistic people and ultimately the relationship, and the narcissistic person's need for supply, regulation, validation, and admiration, means that the video chats and phone sex are only going to be useful for only so long. Now, just like most narcissistic relationships, whether they are from 6 feet away or 6,000 miles away, the issues with empathy, intimacy, and all the rest of it means, distance or not, a healthy relationship is not in the cards. Talk about a sort of a unique kind of corner of the relationship landscape. And we're going to talk in this video about the risk of narcissistic and emotional abuse when you are in what is called a never met relationship. Do you know what a never met relationship is? It's just what it sounds like. It's people who are in some form of long distance relationship, and it may encompass lots of texting, emailing, video chatting, but the one thing that has never happened is that they've never met in person. Never met couples will give lots of reasons for why they never met. Most often they cite a lack of money and resources, so they're not able to travel, especially if it's international travel. Passport and visa restrictions can be a reason. There may be a lack of time off in a job. In some cases, they're adolescents who might have to have parents sign off on them heading out to meet someone, but there's usually a logistical reason why these people, sometimes someone's in the military, so there's a long time there someplace else where they might be able to not be able to meet someone. So people in never met relationships, in some cases, will literally have daily contact. They may video chat every day, they may text multiple times a day, but they've simply, like I said, never been in each other's physical presence. So they have not kissed, hugged, had sex, at least not in real life. But this is a narcissism channel, right? It's not a never met channel. And the question is whether the never met situation could be a setup for a sort of delayed narcissistic relationship situation, and perhaps more than in other situations where the in-person meetup happens at a first date. So let's take that on. Love bombing can happen anywhere. It can happen in real life, but it certainly can happen virtually. And it happens all the time. In fact, for some people, a lot of their love bombing does happen in virtual environments. Online love bombing, or even never met love bombing, may look like effusive texts, lots of texting, long emotional emails, lots of DMs, daily calls. It may even be physical gifts that are sent. All of the intensity without being in someone's physical presence, right? In a never met relationship, someone may tell you that this is a once in a lifetime love story and make other grandiose proclamations of the love story the two of you have. Now we know, doesn't matter if it's virtual or not, that love bombing doesn't last forever. And you also have to keep in mind that narcissistic folks are really actually quite good at online relationships because they're very charming, they're very charismatic, they can take one hell of a sexy selfie, and they may have the time to compose just the right response to you. The advantage, if you will, of online romantic relationship spaces for narcissistic or even impulsive people is that they may have a sort of a different way of regulating themselves because the conversations may not always pull for the same kinds of real-time reactivity that you'd see in a real life relationship would pull for, those sort of quick and mean reactions that we often see in real life in narcissistic relationships. Now, that's not to say that a narcissistic person can't angry text. They can, and they definitely will. And a never met relationship is equally vulnerable to angry texting. But in a never met relationship, a narcissistic person may have a chance at keeping it together for a little longer. But that said, we know that narcissistic people can drop the meanest stuff into a text. And it may be in response to what you said, or sometimes it's just out of nowhere and bam, they just drop a bomb on you. Now, in a never met relationship, more stuff can be hidden. And a narcissistic person might be able to keep some of their more toxic stuff under wraps for longer. You may not be seeing them experiencing the kinds of stuff of life stressors that may bring out the worst in some folks, like driving in traffic or not getting the right table at the restaurant. You're not going to be with them and see those moments. You may also not get to witness the lack of equitability or balance, like them not helping with the dishes. So you may not see some of the red flags in the same way because you don't get sort of as full a look at their behavior. Now, shady behavior and betrayal behavior is obviously more common in narcissistic people. So obviously a never met relationship could be a setup for a narcissistic person to actually have multiple relationships online without another person finding out. And so the narcissistic person may be getting 2 or 3 times the amount of supply because they might be able to keep multiple virtual relationships going on, or maybe have one in real life and another one that's virtual. It would be harder to figure out if they're running this kind of shady scam because you aren't with them. Now, I have no doubt that jealousy may be quite heightened in never met relationships. But these days, because we are able to see the digital breadcrumbs that people scatter all over the world as they leave DMs and look at people's profiles and all of that, you can see how this could make a never met situation potentially quite dicey. But ultimately, a narcissistic relationship is a narcissistic relationship. And while in a never met relationship, you may not get to see their in-person tantrums, the key in a never met relationship, just like in any relationship, is to give yourself that same level of discernment. The risk of a never met relationship when it comes to narcissism is that the excitement may last longer. So over time, you may actually find yourself more pulled to justify them. People can still be late to FaceTime calls. People can still be mean and gaslighty by text. And people can definitely betray you electronically. Narcissistic folks are equal opportunity offenders. I think that never met relationships may mean that love bombing may get kind of protracted and drawn out for a longer time, but you can still get trauma bonded to someone you have never physically met. You can still be betrayed, lied to, invalidated, gaslighted, manipulated, dominated, isolated by, even if you've never met someone. Electronic spaces are very robust, and in fact, may offer even more opportunities for gaslighting, where the texting gaslighter may say to you, "Oh, you're just reading my messages wrong. Don't be so sensitive." Cues are a lot more difficult to interpret in texted communication than when we can see someone's face and their expression. There is a risk that a never met relationship may feel like a lighter lift because it doesn't require so much in-person time. So that a person who's in a never met sort of relational setup with a narcissistic person may just be one more easy to access source of supply. And then when you throw in there that a lot of people in never met relationships get resistance from the world at large, people judge never met folks, and they'll say to them things like, "You can't be in love with someone you have never met," or "This isn't a real relationship." That's not really fair to them, right? A person can certainly get hurt in an online relationship. And because the folks around them may perceive that their relationship is not real because they've never met, that when people are hurt in these never met types of relationships, they may not be able to get the support they need from other people at a time when they are confused and justifying and wondering if they're to blame, all the stuff that could happen in any unhealthy, invalidating, or toxic relationship. It doesn't matter if it's live, video, text, email, DM, or some other electronic means of talking to each other I don't even know about. Narcissistic relationships hurt. And the never met world may often get missed by folks who don't give these relationships credence. I don't know, if you have strong feelings for someone and then you're manipulated by them or deceived or invalidated or mistreated, it hurts. It doesn't matter the medium. And the grief is still very real. But then this raises the big question about, what about when the never met? Then I guess it's no longer a never met. But I think one of the big struggles is the more time that's spent in these sorts of virtual spaces, the more we've almost have been left to sort of create some of the narrative in our own minds. And so that thing that got created through this virtual space, when you meet it in real life, if indeed it is a narcissistic person, it may sting that much harder. So I guess once they meet, they're no longer a never met, and so they're not relevant to this video. But I hope that gives some clarity on a relational dynamic that you may not have known has a name, but it does, and it can still be a problem. I'm not very hip, so I was kind of late to the situationship party. Now, but that said, there's things that have been out there for a long time, and it seems they just didn't have a name. And I guess that's where this whole idea of the situationship comes in. It's sort of that demilitarized zone between booty calls, friendships, and full-on relationships is something called the situationship. A hazy nether zone where it's not quite a relationship, but it's a little bit more than a friendship. The rules are undefined, the expectations are undefined, and the healthiest take on a situationship is that it's a place where you are still exploring, but it's not really a thing. So that means it becomes the Wild West with regard to what constitutes infidelity, what are the expectations, even breaking up. If it's a situationship, how does that ever really end? Do you really have that difficult conversation? Now, this term situationship has been around for a while, but someone brought it up to me recently, and when we were talking about it, I thought, oh, I'd never thought of it this way. This is prime territory for a narcissistic person to run roughshod. A situationship is kind of a narcissistic person's dream. It feels like a relationship. It may even look like a relationship, but because it's not one, they get all the benefits of a relationship. And I don't just mean sex. I also mean they get a person to spend time with, or text with, or flirt with, a person to turn to, but without any of those infernal rules, regulations, or expectations. And if the other person wants more, well, then the narcissist has it made. It's just a situationship. It feels almost like a setup for future faking. Yeah, narcissist says, I'd love to see you Saturday. And you say, great, see you then. They pull out at the last minute because they get something else they want to do. You get mad and they say, chill out. It's not like we're in a relationship or anything. Which is a bit gaslighty, and it does become a gaslight place too. You may be enjoying it, but also want to know if you can plan on them doing something with you or rely on them to do something, which we'd expect of someone in our life. And then they can play the, I don't know, you're asking a lot. This is starting to feel like too much. You may be needing more than I can give. They'll play that card, and then that leaves you feeling like you're needy, and they're in the clear because it's a situationship. The sociological backdrop to these situationships are that, people are marrying later, right? The pressure that relationships be a certain way in courtship and all that, that's all loosening up. And all of this allows space for people to explore before sort of the structure of a relationship sets in. There is room and space to have nights that might feel like dates. You wouldn't have that in a just friend situation. But the whole thing can move slower. And you might have multiple situationships happening. My guess is that a fair share of narcissistic people would love this setup because they can keep you and other people on ice and get lots of validation simultaneously without having to do the work of one relationship. And then if you try to push it, well then, if you're asking too much of them, they get to offload and project on you that you're being needy. Now, I am definitely not saying that every situationship involves a narcissistic person. It's not at all. In fact, now that I look back in my own life before this word existed, I, like many people, have been in more than a few situationships. There's such a pressure out there too in the world for people to be the cool person in the relationship, like easy breezy, go with the flow, I don't care, you can't hurt me kind of cool indifference. Situationships sort of pull for this sort of cool-headedness, which may not actually be authentic to people. Somebody who really likes someone, anyone who has a history of social anxiety, people who have attachment challenges, people who have a history of narcissistic relationship, people who might care more deeply. A situationship may feel like sitting in a car with no seats or seat belts, chaotic and unsafe. I understand that human relationships evolve, and obviously we have come a long way from courtship rituals and quick marriages. But in any of these relationship structures, being aware of how they work for us, and also being aware of how some of these kinds of setups can actually magnify the likelihood of narcissistic dynamics, can be a big help. I guess my hope is that that helps you with whatever type of situationship you may be in. Again, I'm feeling my years at this point. I didn't know this was a thing, but when somebody explained it and their situationship was with a narcissistic person, I thought, why haven't I thought about this or talked about this before? Everything in its time. What if you're the person that the narcissist cheated with? Let's take this one on. So this is potentially going to be an unpopular video, right? I know it, but many people have asked for it, and I want this channel to be responsive to what people are asking for. But I know we often don't take a kindly look at the person who is the other person in an infidelity setup. What I mean is that there's person A and person B, and they're in a relationship. Person A cheats with person C. Many people are equally mad at person C as they are at person A. I get it. But like I said, I've gotten this question a few times. I want to take it on. Those of you who are offended by this, you can stop watching here. But those of you who care about this, keep listening. Because frankly, person A is the issue, but it is more complex. There are other questions. Is person C in their own relationship? Are they also betraying someone? Does person C even know person A is in a relationship? And in this question, we are more specifically assuming that person A, the person having the affair, is the narcissist. Otherwise, that's what this video is about. So obviously, if you've been hurt by a narcissistic person cheating on you, you may not give a damn about person C. Like I said, you can cut this video here for yourself. Everyone else, keep listening. Narcissistic people do tend to cheat. We've talked about this before. They need validation, they need admiration, they need supply, they live in a grandiose fantasy world. Relationships are very superficial for them. They aren't really good at intimacy or empathy. They're entitled. They just feel entitled to do what they want when they want. We know the list of the why. And since this why comes into play for lots of narcissistic people, lots of them cheat. Now, not all cheaters are narcissistic. And not all narcissists cheat. So in this video, we're going to take on the very specific issue of the person who is the side piece or the lover for the narcissistic person who is in a relationship. Now, again, I really do believe that this group, this person C, these people who are the affair partner of the narcissist, they don't get to hear about their situation much because there is so much shame. People are mad at them for being the other man, the other woman, the other person. But some specific things happen to the people who are sort of the lover to the narcissist in an affair. So let's break down what happens to them. Number one, the person C, the person the narcissist is having the affair with, they go through all the same stuff that anyone in a narcissistic relationship cycle goes through. Love bombing, devaluation, discarding, hoovering, the whole 9 yards. In fact, the love bombing may have this sort of exciting feel to it because if they even know the person has another partner, they may be sneaking around, there may be not. But then in the case when the narcissistic person is being transparent that, yeah, I'm in a relationship, there may also be a sense of triangulation. The love bombing may be about how the person who's having the affair with the narcissist, the love bombing may be about how this affair person brings something that they don't have in their marriage. It can be a toxically intoxicating dynamic. Number two, people who are, again, the lover or the affair partner for the narcissistic person can feel tremendous shame and subsequently not get the help they may need for narcissistic abuse or even have supportive people to talk with. Some may, but others may have folks in their life who judge their actions really harshly. And so people who are sort of the lover of the narcissist, people in these circumstances may not even be able to access the support that they need. Number three, it's the ultimate future faking setup. The narcissist will often keep dangling the idea that they're going to leave their spouse or partner for you, or talking about what a future could look like if you could just be together. And that can kind of be used as a weapon. The person they're having the affair with may feel like they have to be extra good and can't make a single mistake, or then the narcissistic person will fully retreat back into their primary relationship. When a narcissistic person is having an affair, and that affair is running smoothly and they're not getting caught, they are often at their cocky best. They're getting plenty of supply. They're getting away with something. They feel like the smartest person in the room. They feel smug and validated. And so with that smugness, they actually do believe they can have their cake and eat it too. Why wouldn't they? They kind of are. And that may even embolden more of this future faked game playing. And in fact, a really well-supplied narcissist can actually be a great spouse And their marriage may look like it's going well, even though you're in this relationship with them. Number 4 is that you're made to feel lucky if they do spend time with you. Remember, they already have their plan A in place. So your ability to express any needs in this relationship with your narcissistic lover are often quite silenced after the devaluation phase begins. So if you even try to ask for anything, there may be threats of abandonment, ending the relationship, saying that this isn't fun anymore. And again, there's always that threat that they're going to leave you, stay in the primary relationship. Number 5, because of the future faking, you may waste months or even years. The trauma bonding may be operating for folks who feel connected to the narcissistic affair partner and reluctant to let go. And it's believing that, oh, just a few more months and a few more months. But in tandem to that is the increasing realization of how much time you're wasting. You may also believe that once they are spending more time with you, or they actually do leave their primary relationship, that you will somehow have a different and better relationship with them than they are having in their marriage or their primary relationship. Now, no, you're not. You're going to have all the problems that that person had with them. Now, they're your problems. Number 6, you're going to encounter the same gaslighting, manipulation, invalidation, rage, blame shifting. After all, it is a narcissistic relationship, so it doesn't matter if you are the novelty and the exciting, sometimes only occasional partner. The leopard doesn't change its spots. Number 7, if you get tired of this whole sort of sneaking around and consider leaving, you may encounter vindictiveness. The narcissistic person will say, oh yeah, you think you're ready to leave? Well, I'm sure your employer won't look well at you being the person who slept with the married person kind of thing. If this is happening in the workplace, forget about it. And if you are in a relationship, they may dangle the threat of telling your partner or your friends. Number 8, existing narcissistic abuse patterns like rumination may be far worse if you're in one of these situations because it's a far more confused circumstance, especially if you are invested in someday having a longer term committed relationship with them down the road. You may analyze everything and spend your time trying to do the things to be better than their primary partner who they're already with. Keep in mind, they are dropping those little Easter eggs into the relationship of all the terrible things their spouse or partner did to get you to jump through those toxic hoops and behave differently than they're telling you that their spouse and partner in their primary relationship are. Number 9, your self-blame may be multiplied. Everyone in a narcissistic relationship blames themselves, but this is going to be magnified because there's also most likely self-blame about being somebody who's doing something that could be hurting someone else, and that feels unethical or wrong. Number 10, the grief is so complex in these situations. When one of these relationships ends, however it ends, as with all narcissistic relationships, there may be grief. Grief not only of what might have been, maybe if you met at a different time, or even grief over the sense that you weren't the one who was chosen. Also the grief of time wasted in a relationship that wasn't even something you could have shared with others, that might have felt wrong, and that never had any chance of turning into something more. Now, what if their primary partner finds out, wife, husband finds out, and their primary relationship ends because their spouse ends it? Well, then they have you to land with, right? But initially, you may find that narcissistic person pacing around angry that their other relationship ended. And that doesn't feel good to hear over and over again about their divorce and all this other stuff. You may also now be facing their full frontal narcissism. There is no other place where they can go and vent and be like they used to be able to do. Now you're getting all of them, and it probably feels different, and I'm guessing a lot worse. You may be thinking, oh, be careful what you wish for, because nobody wishes for this. This is not a morality tale or a judgment. People who have any kind of relationship with a narcissist, even if it is this kind of triangulated situation of an affair, even if the world judges them harshly for having that relationship because it is deemed as a betrayal, it's deemed as wrong. People who are these sorts of affair partners of narcissistic people, they do still get hurt, harmed, and go through all of the fallout of narcissistic abuse, and probably more shame, self-blame, and less support. Obviously, the best path forward is to not ever get into these relationships of any kind with narcissistic folks. But for people who are in these circumstances, I know support is lacking. In fact, some of the more powerful things I have witnessed is when a client of mine who was the one cheated on, and the affair partner, those two people talk, right? So the person they had the affair with and the person cheated on. And there's a lot of anger and hurt, but they will come out looking at all the lies that are told by the narcissist told each of them. And they recognize that what each of them endured was pretty similar. That mirroring moment can actually be quite profound for both people. It doesn't happen often, it happens pretty rarely, but when it does, it's quite incredible to witness. Here's the bottom line. No matter what role you play in these relationships, they're just not good for you. Whether you're someone that they're having an affair with, whether you're married to them, whether you're in a long-term relationship with them. But there's something unique when you are that person that they are cheating with. Again, the world is judging you harshly. You can understand that in many ways because someone's being hurt by your existence. However, you are, in fact, if this is a narcissistic person, going through something pretty brutal. And because of the things I talked about, in some ways it's a lot worse because you might be being careful and holding yourself back because you know that they always have a place to turn to. And then if it does turn out that you kind of get what you wanted and they come to be with you, especially if their primary relationship ends, now you have to be their life coach, babysitter, and shrink as they go through a toxic divorce. And in some ways it could be a foreshadowing of how toxic your breakup could be with. Do narcissistic people have friends? Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by a friend, okay? Now, as a rule, grandiose narcissists are extroverted by nature. So they surround themselves with people. In fact, it's really quite hard for them to function without an audience or without lots of people around them. They do not do solitude and can get quite irritable if they have to spend time alone. Narcissists with money will keep lots of people on the payroll, and their homes can be a steady circus of housekeepers and hairdressers and massage therapists and personal trainers and coaches and teachers and tutors and chefs. Well, that's not most of us, and narcissists without money will rarely miss things like happy hour, or they'll throw backyard barbecues or anything they can do to keep people around. Because obviously, if validation and admiration and narcissistic supply are the air that you breathe, you will need people around you to provide that air supply, to provide that validation. Now, interestingly, not all narcissists are naturally extroverted. Covert or vulnerable narcissists can actually be more on the reserved side, maybe even somewhat introverted, often because they are quite socially anxious and are often not the one you see at the center of the party. Instead, they may maintain a sort of petulant sullenness about other people and be quite contemptuous of other people in their lives. But those covert narcissists have to figure out other ways to get narcissistic supply. Covert narcissists will often get their narcissistic supply by presenting themselves in a victimized manner and expecting people to reassure them and uplift them. They feel entitled to that. So let's go back to this idea of friends. In a healthy paradigm, a friendship is a relationship characterized by kindness, warmth, compassion, respect, connection, shared interests, and trust. None of those are strong suits for narcissists. It can be deceiving because narcissists can often seem like they are surrounded by people. But when you scratch the surface, you may find out that people spend time with them because they throw great parties, or because they pick up the check, or the so-called friend is on the payroll. Are those what you'd call friends? Personally, I wouldn't want a friendship like that, but maybe it works for the people in it. For narcissists, life is just lifelong high school mean girls or mean guys. Lots of gossip, lots of triangulation and undermining. It can all feel very tenuous when you're friends with a narcissist. But because a friend is often a lower stakes relationship than maybe a parent or a sibling or a partner, many people find it easier to rationalize or justify their friend's behavior. There's a very emotionally stunted quality to narcissistic friendships. They may feel similar to high school or junior high school friendships. They can be quite superficial, devoid of any deep conversation. Some people who are friends with a narcissist may feel like a babysitter at times and may start to feel exhausted by the need to always compliment them or do things according to the narcissist's plan. Narcissistic individuals will often control friendships to play out as they want them, to their convenience, which is why you may not hear from a narcissist for weeks or even months or even years at a time, and then all of a sudden may hear from them when they need something or they need someone to go somewhere with them. Now, over time, most narcissists burn bridges. You can only be a fair weather friend for so long before people get wise to it. People may burn out on it being a friendship that's really only focused on the narcissist. Other more important stuff in your life may take over. And always remember, you will only be a friend in the narcissist's life for as long as it works for them. When something better comes along, they will discard you, just as in any narcissistic relationship. Better may mean a friend with higher status, more money, more power, more connections, better toys. When I say better, I don't mean a person who is better from an emotional or human perspective, but it still hurts to be discarded. However, friendship discard is a signature move of the narcissist. And as time goes on and you aren't hip enough or thin enough or cool enough, then you are also very likely to be thrown into the friendship dustbin. They stop getting in touch. They stop responding. Hard as it may be, you need to breathe a sigh of relief and just let them go. And interestingly, because narcissists are so hypersensitive and almost paranoid, they always think people are slighting them or letting them down or out to get them. And their hypocrisy can mean they feel they have permission to treat a friend badly, and that their friend should then just understand and forgive them when they behave badly, and they would rarely offer such human generosity to a friend. As a result, their friendships often end because friends just get exhausted at the drama, at the narcissist's sensitivity, and the hypocritical double standard. Narcissistic friendships are one-way streets. They will come to you 100 times with their tales of woe. But the first time you turn to them for a sympathetic or empathetic ear, they become bored, disinterested, distracted, or just too busy to talk. The hypocrisy can be heartbreaking. The narcissistic grandiosity can also mean that they perceive relationships inaccurately. In other words, perhaps they meet someone, I don't know, famous or a celebrity of some kind, and they meet them just one time, or they meet them through another friend or something like that. They will talk about that famous person as though they are friends. In fact, whenever a narcissist meets a higher status person, an interesting cycle starts, whereby the narcissist almost becomes one of those, like those sticky parasitic fishes that attach to sharks and whales and just sort of eat their leftovers. In fact, narcissists will often try to buy their way or otherwise get access to famous people and attempt to construct pseudo-friendships with those famous people so they can get grandiosity by proxy. And before you know it, you are being replaced by their sort of fantasy friendship with a local celebrity or a person of renown. It's actually kind of sad to witness. They will talk of fancy folks they had met years back with a familiarity that would lead you to believe they were best buddies with actors, athletes, royalties, politicians and other famous flotsam and jetsam. So my short answer is that despite them always referring to everyone as being their buddy, or we go way back, or yeah, we're homies, they don't have real friendships. Narcissists don't have the people who aren't on the payroll. They don't have the people who bring them chicken soup when they're sick voluntarily. They don't have the people who listen to that breakup story for the 100th time, nor would they be willing to forego a fancy night with fancy people for their birthday dinner. And that sucks for them. But another thing you also need to keep in mind is that if you ever run afoul, you say the wrong thing, a narcissist feels like you stuck it to them or didn't do the right thing or were disloyal in some way, they will not only discard you, they will defame you, they will smear campaign you. Ending a friendship with a narcissist is no easy business. They hold grudges forever. So really, heaven help you if you do the wrong thing by a narcissist, because you will hear about it forever. And in that case, it's a friendship. These are relationships that are often a lot easier to walk away from. And what I hope for you is that you fill your life with those friends who bring you the chicken soup, listen to that breakup story, and forego the big night out just to have a birthday cake with you. That is what a healthy friendship looks like. So again, would love to hear from you. Those of you with narcissistic friends, how'd that all go down? Do you have a narcissistic friend? And honestly, I want to know, why do you keep them around? I get it. I've had more than a few. I know why I kept them around. I want to hear from you. So thanks again for tuning in. Please subscribe, join this community, hit that bell if you want to be notified every time we put out a new video. And if you like this and learned something, give us that thumbs up. Thanks again.